Good morning, everyone. This week we're starting a new unit, which is looking at writings about medicine by medical practitioners, specifically by physicians. We'll be reading two authors this week, Atul Gawande and William Carlos Williams. So I'd like to give you some background information on William Carlos Williams and also his short story, The Use of Force. And as a disclaimer, I'm going to be looking at my notes. They're off to my side, so if you see me looking across to my side, that's why. First, I want to give you William Carlos Williams's dates. He was born in 1883, and he lived until 1963. And he had a joint career. On the one hand, he was a really accomplished author of American literature in the first half of the 20th century. He wrote in all genres, producing 23 volumes of poetry, 5 collections of short fiction, 6 novels, 7 books of nonfiction, 5 plays, and 4 translations. And that's just an enormous amount for any one author. In addition, he also was a practicing physician. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania's medical school in 1906, and he practiced his entire life in Rutherford, New Jersey. And he felt that his writing and his medicine were completely complementary practices. In fact, I have a quote from him. He says, quote, "As a writer, I have been a physician, and as a physician, a writer," end quote. His short stories are characterized by a few things. One is a really strong sense of realism and immediacy. And by realism, I mean that his stories are probable and believable, and that as a reader, you can imaginatively enter into the world of the story by understanding the psychology of the characters or the narrators, and by having a feeling or a sense that that interior spaces and histories are realistic. His short stories, he also felt, provided him with, quote, "a good medium for nailing down a single conviction," end quote. And by that, I think he means that his short stories are not diffusive. They're not going to explore a million different angles or a million different viewpoints or topics or issues. He explores one single situation and allows us to see it in all of its complexity. Um, and his short stories oftentimes are based on his own experiences in Rutherford, New Jersey. They frequently deal with poverty and suffering, often involving immigrants who lived along the banks of the Passaic River in New Jersey. And that actually may indeed be what we're seeing in this story, The Use of Force. So I want to give you a little bit of background now on the use of force itself. It was a short story. It was published in the November to December 1933 issue of the magazine Blast. And it's about a physician who is visiting a young pediatric patient, and it's really about his struggle to get her to open her mouth so that he can examine her throat for what he suspects is diphtheria, and she doesn't want to open her mouth. So, by way of background, you've probably heard of diphtheria, but may not know that much about it. Diphtheria is a bacterial infection of the mucous membranes in the throat and the nose. And it has symptoms that are similar to the flu, with one hallmark, which is that patients with diphtheria develop a thick gray covering on the back of her throat. And that's what the physician in the use of force is trying to see. If untreated, diphtheria is quite serious. It can damage the heart, the kidneys, or the nervous system, and it can even lead to death. So, diphtheria is also spread by droplets, and for that reason, outbreaks tend to occur in crowded and even sort of unsanitary conditions. Now, today, diphtheria can be treated with a combination of penicillin and antitoxin, but most people in the US today don't get diphtheria because they've been vaccinated against it in childhood. The diphtheria vaccine has been available in the US since actually the 1920s. So it would have been a vaccine that would have been available to, Williams's patients, but it wasn't widely available until the 1940s. So chances were high that they might not have been able to get their hands on it. But diphtheria antitoxin was actually available in the US. since about the 1890s. So it would have been possible that the child in the story could be treated for diphtheria, but again, the physician would need to know. So this story is really interesting to me for a couple of different reasons. First, the physician just describes himself as becoming enraged and losing control, which is not really a way in which people are used to thinking about or seeing physicians who oftentimes seem so calm and so measured and so expert. Um, and he describes his struggle with this child really as a battle and, in sort of martial terms. The description itself has sort of, arguably sexual overtones. He is trying to force the child to do something with her body that she does not want to do. But the most interesting thing, I think, about the story, and the one that I would like to talk about in the discussion board, is the fact that the story seems to turn on two completely intertwined struggles. The first is the struggle between life and death. Again, as I said, diphtheria can be a deadly disease. That struggle between life and death, though, occurs or is filtered through a struggle between the doctor's sense of control and losing control. And not just the doctor's, but also the child's sense of control and losing control. All right, I look forward to hearing about what you think about this work in the discussion board. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you soon.